Welcome to episode 28 of Two Docs Talk, Better Living for a Better Life. I'm Rob Hoyer, joined by my co-host Abbass Shafi. Today we're going to talk about high-intensity strength training, and we have a guest, James Hilliard, who's a retired military pilot who's going to talk about this topic. Before we dive in, we just wanted to talk a little bit about the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And we've focused on these pillars over the past 27 episodes. And today we're going to bring you an episode which is a topic which is a little bit different, and something that's new. It was certainly new to us when we heard about it, and we'll get into that in a few minutes. But I'll let Abbass make some comments first.
Great. It's nice to be together with you, Rob. So overall, our purpose is for every individual to make the right decision for their longevity, their health, and preventive disease. That's our goal is. And through these, previous episodes, we have covered the diet, which everybody is really concerned. We have exercise, sleep, stress, social interaction. These are all very, very important in our just daily pillars of life. But there's at least in West, when I see going to hospital, talk to the physician, there's a separation between the traditional medicine as well as modern medicine. But when you go to East, these are all combined together. There's a hand-to-hand together. Of course, when you have an acute gallbladder disease, surgery is the way to do it. If you have cancer, chemotherapy and surgery is the way to go. If you have an ulcer, we can treat with modern medicine. But for preventive and again to resuming a good normal life, some of the non-alternative medicine, whether it's functional medicine or different exercise for younger people, their availability, and each individual should choose what is appropriate for them. Of course, we need to have the ABC of the living, and then depend how much time we have for exercise or what availability we have, what are resources we have, as well as the nutrition, what availability we have, around our house, whether we can buy fresh grocery. In some areas, food desert. Sometimes they have to rely on other alternative medicine. So from now on, we're going to bring some of the non-traditional things, but it's the individual have to choose that. We do not endorse all of the things, but we want just more of awareness and sharing the information with you.
I completely agree. And we wanted to also talk a little bit about our stance on different products. As you all know, there's thousands of different products out there that are for supplements and different devices for exercise and whatnot. There's many things. During the podcast, we may mention products, or our guests may mention products, and if there is a financial relationship that we have with the guest or with the product, we're going to disclose that. So we're not here to be promoting any specific products, but if there's something that might be helpful for you, we want you to be able to know about it, learn about it, so you can do your own research and see if that might be something that's right for you. So that's the concept that we wanted to just to clarify, because some of these things that are non-traditional, and we'll talk about the high intensity strength training here in a second. This is a good example of a non-traditional method of exercise that might be right for some. It may not be right for everybody. So this also is a podcast. If you are someone who does 2 hours of cardio a day and runs marathons, and that's how you do your exercise, and there's no other way that you'll ever consider doing it, you may want to skip this one. This might be a podcast that may not be for you. But if you're like 95% of Americans, 95% who do not meet the recommended exercise levels, this may be something to learn about, or at least start to implement some part of this. And we'll talk about what we're referring to here in a second. So this episode is going to be dedicated to high intensity strength training. And I mentioned James Hilliard. He's a retired pilot. He flew both Apache helicopters and fixed wing aircraft in combat. And we'll talk a little bit about that during the interview. I got to meet James through my wife, she's a member of his program. It's called Osteostrong, and she has some bone loss that she's working on, and so she joined this to help reverse her bone loss. So I really enjoyed speaking to James. He has just a wealth of information about exercise and strength training, and I think we can say we both learned a lot in the interview. Abbass, do you have any other comments?
No, I think without further ado, let's talk to James.
We present James Hilliard. Like I said in the intro, we're here tonight with James Hilliard. And James, thank you so much for coming on Two Docs Talk.
Oh yeah, no, this is my pleasure. Again, thanks for the invite. Yeah, this is pretty cool.
My wife recommended that I speak with you, and when she says that, I said, okay, I've got to talk to this guy. So thank you. We're so excited to have you here, and we're just curious about your story about high intensity training, what we'll call HIIT in this episode, and specifically how you got into this in the military. You know, when I think of the military, I think about, you know, regimented, a certain time exercise, push-ups, you know, run a mile in a certain time, all the usual stuff. This is very different. And so we're really curious about how you got interested in this.
Yeah, it is very different, but some of that is actually really true. It is pretty regimented to where we have our physical training formations in the morning of push-ups and sit-ups and runs and ruck marches and all that fun stuff. But what I noticed for myself anyway is that we have our military fitness test that we have to do about twice a year. And I noticed for whatever reason, I wasn't improving. And I can understand why. It made no sense to me whatsoever. And it seemed like every year that I did it, I was progressively getting worse every time. So it wasn't even like I was even really maintaining what I had. It was actually getting harder and harder for me just to hit the minimums that I needed for that. So of course, my time in the military too, I didn't mention this, but I was actually studying exercise physiology. So I was, you know, incorporating some of that into my training and everything like that. And none of it was ever making sense to me. And then by chance, in some of my studies that I was doing, I actually came across a research that was actually done at West Point, so the United States Military Academy, to where they actually used high intensity strength training in actually that protocol. And this was actually done in 1975. That's how old this is. It's like this isn't even new stuff. So I think it was called Project Total Conditioning, is what it was called, and it was published in 1975. And in that study, they pretty much wanted to see is like, okay, with this high intensity training for strength, you know, what will it do for cardiovascular health? What would it do for muscular strength? What would it do for flexibility, and so on and so forth? And at the end of it, the HIIT group actually outperformed in every cardiovascular event than the control group did. Right. So that actually caught my interest and pretty much took me down the rabbit hole of high intensity strength training.
A key concept of this, it seems that cardiovascular and strength are actually not as distinguished in with this type of exercise. And can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's I think we're all kind of normally thinking about cardio as like running or cycling or swimming or whatever, more endurance and versus strength training.
Right. Well, I guess that's another thing that happened around the 70s also, is how somehow over time aerobics and cardio kind of got mashed into one thing, right? We're not realizing that, okay, cardio, yes, deals with the heart and lungs, but aerobic is actually a metabolic process within our bodies, right? And so looking on the cardio side of things, you can't separate cardio from any kind of muscular activity. So be it you go out for a run, be it you strength train, be it you do whatever, you are going to be working your heart, right? Because your heart and your lungs actually respond to the amount of effort that the body puts in. So your heart and lungs don't know the difference on whether you're going out for a hard 30-second sprint or you're doing a really hard 30-second workout at the gym, of like leg presses or something like that. It's like your heart and lungs don't know the difference. They just know that the body's putting in this much effort and therefore it needs to pump this much blood and respiratory rate in order to compensate for it. Right. So there really is no separation, if you will, of cardio and the amount of work and amount of demand that you're actually putting on the body. Yeah. So
When you started this, I'm just curious, did you do strength? Did you do some type of sprinting? Because there's all sorts of different it's a whole like menu of what you can do for HIIT exercises. I'm curious, what did you do when you were starting this process?
when I started, well, I would say even for myself, when I started the process, I probably did what like a lot of people did and probably didn't believe that it was possible that you can work out this little to get those results kind of thing. So for those who don't know, high intensity training is a very abbreviated workout program to where you're only working out for, I think some examples, I only had them working out for like 9 minutes a week. Right. And some of the examples. Right. And so even myself, I can wrap my head around. It's like, how can I only work out for 9 minutes a week and be able to get these results? Right. So it took me a good, maybe a year and a half before I finally actually put that into practice. So I was combining like HIIT training with my normal training, but I realized that I was overtraining, if you will. I was always tired, always sore, always whatever. So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this HIIT thing a try 100% all the way through and just see what happens. So I did a little bit of both. So I did strength training once a week, and then I did sprint training the next week or the next day. So I would do the weights, and then 48 hours later or so is when I would do the sprint training, to help improve my running style and stuff like that. Because that's something we probably talk about also, because there is a law in exercise called the specific adaptation of induced demand. So your body adapts to the demands that you put on it. So since one of the requirements in the Army is running, right? So I had to throw in running in there somewhere with my training.
Fascinating. So maybe we could talk a little bit about how this works. And I know you have that acronym, the FIT, FITT acronym. And then I know Abbass has some questions about the muscle we wanted to ask you about. So
yeah. So with so FIT of all things is actually one of the principles of exercise. And it's kind of how this works. So it's frequency, intensity, time, and type. So of course, frequency is like how many days per week you would do it. Intensity is just that, the demand that you put on the body. Time is how much time you're putting that demand on your body. And of course, type is just the type of exercise. And what they found and what they're discovering, at least back in the 70s, a gentleman by the name of Arthur Jones suggested that the more intense you make an exercise, the less frequent you can do it, right? So the frequency and intensity are inverse of each other, right? So the more frequent you do something, the less intense, the more intense, the less frequent. So that's kind of what bore the high intensity training concept back in the 70s with Arthur Jones. He's like, it's a better idea just to train harder, but to train briefer versus the other way around if you want maximum results in your strength training.
And the results were similar to each other?
Yeah, there were actually, well, some argue that it would be better because a lot of the studies were done like for 8 to 12 weeks, comparing the high intensity training to like a standard weight training protocol. So they were roughly the same. But some argue that if they would have kept on longer, say beyond the 12 weeks, that the people that were doing the standard weight training program, that they eventually would have plateaued and stalled. And then that the group doing the high intensity training would have continued to grow.
Let's go to some basics of just can you see some pathophysiology or anatomy of the muscle. so people can understand, as this, you use this fit program, how does the muscle, sees it and how it responds to it, and for longevity, how much it helps.
All right. So as far as it's kind of funny because like muscle types always seem to change every few years. It seems like the one that hasn't changed at all though is type 1 muscle. So that is what we call your slow twitch muscles. That is where that one is your what they call the slow oxidative muscle, pretty much primarily used in the aerobic system. So this is where you see your long distance runners and everything like that. That's primarily the muscle that they use there. And then you have your type 2 muscle. And in type 2 muscle, you have type 2A, which is almost like a combination of your type 1 muscle and kind of what they call the type 2B muscle. So it has some aerobic capacity and some anaerobic capacity in it as well. So it has more power than the slow twitch, but it doesn't have as much endurance as the slow twitch though, either. So usually in the type A range, that's where a lot of times you see like your power lifters, your sprinters, and so on and so forth. When it comes to the type A, your type 2A. Now, type 2B, on the other hand, this is what they call the elusive type 2B. Type 2B is technically used for like way back into the day. That's what we call our emergency reserve, if you will. So like if you had a tiger hunting you and you really need to get up that darn tree, it was your type 2B muscles that was getting you up that tree, or the times where you hear a story of a mom lifting a car off their kid, kind of thing. That is the type 2B muscles that are kicking in at that time. And the way it goes, pretty much the majority of the glycogen that we store is actually in the type 2B muscles. So what high intensity strength training does, and the whole intention behind it, is to fatigue all three of those muscles. So you want to fatigue type 1, type 2A, and type 2B, right? So you want to get all the way down to that type 2B to wipe out the glycogen in those muscles right there. And it creates what's called a hormonal cascade. Because once you do that, it sends off a whole widespread of adaptive properties that your body needs to take place in order to adapt to the load. Because it's very rare that we actually get to those type 2B actually muscle fibers when we're doing any kind of training.
And that's when you use high as a O2 max. Is that correct?
What was that again?
The O2 max for using providing oxygen and other things to the muscles. So you need to use oxygen and you increase your oxygen capacity.
Well, right. Because the way, like, if you want to go into how our metabolism works within the muscle, right? Because like our aerobic and our anaerobic system are constantly working together, right? And unfortunately, like when we focus so much on endurance, we think we're separating the two. We think we're just working on aerobics and you're separating the whole anaerobic side. But you really can't separate. They're both always working at the same time. One is just more active than the other, right? So that's where this comes into play, is that you are, so parts of your anaerobic system goes through an entire chemical process, right? And it creates this product called pyruvate. Then pyruvate goes into the aerobic side of the cell, if you will, and that's what all that's mixed with oxygen, all that stuff to kick out like 36 units of ATP, right? So they're all working in synonymous and working in conjunction with each other. So when you go into exhausting all of those muscle types, right, you're eventually building up lactic acid and all that stuff into the anaerobic side of the muscle, right? But that lactic acid can only be processed and cleared out through the aerobic side of the muscle, right? So that's how that actually increases your cardio capability and whatnot, is because you have all this metabolic waste that's backed up on the anaerobic side of the cell, if you will. So once you stop working out, you still have to filter out all that metabolic waste that you have in there of the lactic acid, right? And all of that is actually processed through the aerobic side of the rinse. So your aerobic side is still churning as fast as it possibly can for like hours after you're done with this workout. Right. And then that's why you can actually improve your cardio capacity so quickly and so effectively, doing a HIIT style workout.
So maybe we could talk a little bit about, I know there's a lot of focus on the, VO2 max as one of the biggest predictors of longevity, but muscle mass and muscle strength are also hugely important. Could you comment a little bit about those, and also maybe a little bit about like just HIIT training in general, like kind of how to do it? Because when I was looking at this, it almost seemed like it was like it's like nutrition. There's all sorts of different approaches. There's this
So many
way,
approaches.
there's this
Right.
way, there's this way.
Right.
There's like 10 different ways to do it. How
Right.
does one get started with this?
Right. And then, excuse me, to answer the question on muscle and the longevity side of it, because if you look at our recommendations for exercise and whatnot, our government guidelines and everything like that, everything is pushed towards the endurance side of things, right? But that's only one equation when it comes to fitness and exercise, because you have strength, you have endurance, you have balance and flexibility. You have all four of those that needs to be in place. But all of our emphasis here, at least in the United States anyway, is pushed on the endurance side of things. And I understand that because, everything was pushed towards cardio health. So if you want to improve your cardio health, again, they put cardio and aerobics together into one thing, one box, right? And they completely ignored the strength side of it. So what's so important about adding muscular strength and just muscle mass period to the equation is that not only is muscle just good for locomotion to get you from point A to point B, but also just maintaining muscular strength. That's what gets you off the couch every day. That's what gets you up and down the stairs. That's what helps prevent trips and falls and maintains your balance. But not only that, your muscles are actually the reservoir of amino acids, right? And amino acids play a massive role in from hormonal production to hemoglobin to creating antibodies when you're sick to I believe it's hormonal production already, but yeah, so it plays a massive role even in your overall health that seems to get overlooked, right? Yeah, so amino acids actually play a massive role in what happens in our bodies and whatnot. Not only that, our muscles are actually the storehouse of glucose as well, right? So of course, as you lose muscle mass, if you go out and have your glucose pretty much has nowhere to go. It just circulates in your bloodstream, and either gets converted to fat or you end up becoming diabetic sometime down the road. So actually, yeah. So if people want to help alleviate lower their A1C scores, yeah, just go strength train, build some muscle mass. Yeah, and they have more storage for their glucose.
Why do you think we have not heard about this concept earlier, or is not more in main stream media? So just you see a lot of this from jazzercise to this to that. Every deck has a quick fits, but this is such a basic concept and such a makes sense things, but has not been in the mainstream. What do you think it is, and how we can sort of improve that?
Honestly, I don't know why it hasn't hit mainstream yet. Like I said, it's always been in a small niche, because unless you're looking for it, you're really not going to find it. Right. But again, I think that goes back to is that a lot of our guidelines are based around endurance. Right, to get your 150 minutes of exercise per week or 75 minutes of vigorous activity. And if you read the guidelines, it's like talking about strength training. It's in there, but it's almost like a passing little thing, like you can do it if you want to, kind of thing. It's not right. They make the endurance side of it seem so paramount that it's the one thing you need to do, and then it's like, you can add strength training in there if you want to, kind of thing. However, though, I just read this not too long ago, in the UK in 2019, they actually reversed that in their guidelines. Right. So in the United Kingdom, they actually have strength training over aerobic training now, over in their guidelines. But there is a slow movement going on here in the United States that's trying to put more emphasis on muscle mass and muscle strength. Particularly, I've heard there's a Dr. Gabrielle Lyon out there. She coined the phrase muscle-centric health, kind of thing. So her and Hope, her little cohort, are trying to create that narrative, also to work on muscle mass. Yeah, their argument is that we don't necessarily have a fat problem in the United States; we have an under-muscled problem.
Interesting.
And who should how does it start, and who's go ahead.
Sorry, I just thought it would maybe be interesting, maybe James, to just walk us through like a HIIT like an example of a HIIT exercise, like one or two just ways to do this? I know
Right.
there's a bunch, but maybe just like,
Yeah, there are a bunch. Well, I'll say my favorite way to do it is they call it the slow training protocol. So the slow training protocol is you pretty much pick like 5 exercises that can work the whole body, be it a chest press, a lat pull down, leg press, a overhead press, and like a deadlift kind of thing. And the idea is with each of those, you're going to do 1 rep, pretty much till you just can't do another positive rep again, right? Until you can't do it. And the idea and what I like to, the protocol I like to use is the 10-second rep. So it's 5 seconds up, 5 seconds down, right? And there's no pause in between the reps. So you slowly go up, you don't lock out your arms or anything like that, and then you bring it back down, but you don't let the weights, rest and everything like that. So your muscles are always constantly under tension the entire time. And the goal is to go for anywhere between 30 seconds to 90 seconds. So that's why I like to do the 10 seconds because it makes it easier to know. So if I do 3 reps, that's 30 seconds, right? If I do 9 reps, that's 90 seconds. So if I choose a weight that is too heavy and I can't get to 3 reps, then I know it's too heavy, right? And so I'll lower the weight and everything like that. But if I get to the point where I can do more than 9, then I increase the weight on those. And the reason why I like to do it the slow motion one is only because it's extremely easy on the joints, right? Yeah, so it minimizes the amount of force and everything that you put on your joints, unlike some of the other protocols that might be out there.
so that's probably a key, I think, with this HIIT training is focus on slow movement, trying to reduce injury risk, because most injuries, as we know, occur during movement. There's usually a fall or a trip or something moving. And then also the focus on recovery seems really different because that's something that's really not. I mean, of course, everyone knows they should, if you do some kind of activity, you should wait a little, wait a day or two to do it again. But this is like a week. This is totally different.
Yeah, it's a week. So as we talked about before, when we talked about, getting all the way to those type 2B muscles, right? So the deeper you go into the muscle, the more rest you need. So like your type 1 slow twitch muscles don't need that much rest at all. They recover extremely, extremely quickly. Your type 2A muscles, they just take a little longer. But if you can get all the way down to your type 2B muscles, yeah, those ones can take up to 6 days or longer to fully recover. And a lot of times the way you know that is if you try to go to the gym and you do the same exact weight again with the same exact reps, you're probably going to fall like 3 reps short of it because your type 2B muscles have not recovered yet. So, and that's kind of the tricky part with HIIT and even with myself, because I was so used to doing like a higher volume of training that I felt rested. I feel rested and feel recovered. Like, oh, I can go do this again. But then I go do it again and I don't hit the same numbers anymore.
So just curious, how did it go when you changed? Did it work? Did you get
it
better?
worked out beautifully.
What happened?
Yeah. So I actually gave it a try for a full year. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give this a try for a year, see what happens. And actually, I cut out. So anyway, I'll say once I retired from the military anyway, I stopped the running. I stopped all that stuff. It's like, I'm just going to focus on the strength and see what happens. I'm going to do this for a year, only do strength, only do it once a week and see what happens. And oddly, I got the leanest and the strongest and the fittest I have ever been. Yeah, I did not expect that at all. Right.
And no change in your diet, correct?
Yeah, I didn't change much in my diet. So my diet has been pretty similar for a long time now. So I didn't even change my diet at all. So it was exactly the same. The only thing I changed was just my training protocol. Just doing the HIIT style strength training once a week, yeah, once every 7 days. And I'm literally in and out in 10 minutes. Yeah. And yeah, I was impressed. I was impressed. The hardest part was me just to wait a week, just to sit there and do nothing, and wait for the next workout to come.
Did you do a little bit? Like, could you do like would you do like some stretching or a little bit of, I don't know, fast
Oh, yeah.
walking, or
Yeah, yeah.
what
So
do
I
you do
still
in
do
between?
walking. So I have a pup, so I got to take her out for a walk pretty often. Yeah, yeah. So I still get my 10,000 steps in. So I will say that. So high intensity training does not negate the need for regular movement, right? Because there's certain bodily functions that still work very well with regular movement, such as like blood circulation, to get better, right? As you're walking and your muscles are contracting as you're walking, it's helping increase your blood circulation. Same with your lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system works best with movement, not while you're sitting stagnant. So just doing a HIIT style training does not alleviate you to go and just sit on the couch for the next, hours, or so after doing a session. So yeah, so you still got to get out there, get your 10,000 steps. So that's what I would do. I would do my high intensity strength training once a week, but I did get my 10,000 steps every single day. Yeah, walking my, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, sorry folks, you're not free from that aspect of it.
What are do's and don'ts? Who can start, and what you should be cautious for to start this this protocol, or if you're interested into it?
Yeah, yeah. Anyone can start, from beginners to advanced people. I highly recommend either going to a facility that offers this kind of stuff, or a trainer that can come to you to do it as well. I will say, usually for beginners, like if you haven't gone to the gym or done anything before, definitely get with a trainer to help. I would not use free weights with this. Probably use a machine of some sort, unless you have someone there to spot you using free weights. But definitely use machines. But honestly, there's facilities all over the place now that offers high intensity strength training. So you probably find one near you at some point. Yeah.
Who should go see a doctor before starting this, in your opinion?
And then, well, I guess pretty much anyone with like pre-existing conditions or anything like that. So it's like, yeah, if you have any health concerns or anything like that, recent fractures or osteoporotic or any of those like that, then yeah, probably
Cardiovascular issues, correct?
right.
What about someone who's frail? I know you work with the Osteostrong, which we'll get to in a little bit, but someone like the frail elderly coming in with osteoporosis, how does that work? And how do you work with someone who's got, very, very low bone density and very little muscle?
Right. So that can be challenging when using things like free weights and whatnot. Since you brought up what we do at Osteostrong, we have like proprietary machines in there to where they can safely control the amount of force that they can apply. So you're in 100% control. There's no weights to drop. There's no weight stack to drop. There's no anything whatsoever. So at least the way that we do it at Osteostrong with the machines that we have, we actually invite the frail, right, to come in to try that. Because unfortunately, a lot of them sit there and they'll use like the pink little 5-pound dumbbells and whatnot. Unfortunately, what we know about physiology and everything like that, that really isn't enough for them to develop the musculature that they need and to regain it, right? Because it's not enough force, but also because they're frail, it's understandable that they are afraid of risk of injury, right? So that's where you have to, yeah, be careful with that aspect of it. And that's what we do at Osteostrong, though, is that we give them that safe space, and the machines that we use are relatively safe for pretty much every population out there.
And you get max benefit. You can get up to like 85% of your maximum cardiac output. Is that correct? Or can you clear some of those? Because we were talking with Rob before. We were talking about, just a basic, maximum heart rate is, when you're walking or exercising, maybe some people 60, 70%, but this that short brief gets you to much higher than that. Is that
with
correct?
Like the Carol bike.
Yes.
Yeah,
It can get you up there, right? Especially if you move in rapid succession, if you treat it more like a circuit training. So like if you try to do a high intensity strength training where you move from exercise to exercise to exercise with very little rest in between, yeah, your heart rate's pumping pretty good by the end of it.
Well, maybe let's go into Osteostrong, and then we'll talk a little bit about the research. I know that's Osteostrong is a proprietary type of kind of HIIT type exercise, and it's designed for bone density, but it's based on HIIT principles, is my understanding. Can you talk a little bit about that? It's kind of fascinating, unique approach to bone density.
Right. Yeah. So actually came about, like, the inventor of the machines actually wanted to help his mom who had osteoporosis, kind of thing. And so he just went on a mission to try to figure out and kind of help her so she wouldn't have to take the bisphosphonates and everything that goes along with that. Yeah, so that's how. So he did all the research, all the everything, and the most common research shows that, like, if you wanted to get bone remodeling, like in the hips and in the femoral head, you need to load the body with about 4.2 times your own body weight in order to make that happen. Well, depending on the demographic. So it's 4.2 multiples of body weight for like 18 to 22-year-olds. From 45 to 55-year-olds, I believe the research shows that it's a 3.9 multiples of your body weight in order for that to happen. So it's based off of impact loading, right? So a lot of the studies either had them like jumping off a balance beam or, doing some form of plyometrics and whatnot in order to achieve that. But John Jankwich, did not see his mother doing, box jumps, and whatnot. So he actually developed these machines that he would call emulates impact. So it emulates the same type of forces and whatnot that you would do, versus having to go out and do plyometrics or some other sort of impact style training and whatnot.
What is plyometrics? I'm not familiar with that.
Oh, box training. So when you see like athletes, jumping up and down on like boxes and stuff like that, or jumping off of boxes. So it's jump training, essentially what plyometrics is.
Got it. Okay. And so I had the opportunity to do this about a week ago, and it was very, very unusual type of. I did it more in a to fatigue, or about 36 seconds, like you advised, and it's these 4 machines, and yeah, it's very, very different. And I understand this is so you can do this for osteoporosis, but you can also work out with this too. Is that right?
Right. So because the way it works, so yeah, it was initially designed for osteoporosis. But if you want to get into the physiology of how it works completely, it works your nervous system as well as your muscular system as well as your skeletal system. Excuse me. Yeah, so of course, if you get a neurological response first, that's usually the first adaptation that always occurs anytime you start a weight training session. So as you experience, you're pushing as hard as you can and pushing to your max capacity at the time. So while you're doing that, your nervous system is pretty much rewiring and reattaching motor neurons that it probably hasn't used in a very long time. Right. So that's why within Osteostrong, within the first like 4 sessions, your strength goes through the roof over there, simply because your central nervous system is just rewiring and reactivating some of the muscles you probably haven't used in forever. Especially if you haven't gotten to those type 2B muscle fibers before, your body's like, ooh, what is this? So it has to rewire and reactivate those muscles again. So a lot of people are impressed, within the first month that they're getting such huge gains in strength. Then the next phase after that, once all the nervous system has kicked in as much as it can, right, that's when the muscular strength and growth begins. After that, that's when the muscular adaptations and all that stuff begins, because I'm like, okay, well, nervous system, you've already attached to all the muscle neurons you can, so the only way to get stronger now is to, build more muscle, right? And then as you're building muscle, what it's doing, that muscle is actually contracting against the bone. So bone remodeling occurs whenever you add, torque or torsion or anything to the bone. The bone doesn't really like that very much, right? And so the central nervous system sends a signal to it to start producing what's called osteoblasts, right? It sends more minerals and everything like that for the osteoblasts to grab onto, and it's the osteoblast that actually helps you build up that bone density.
Yeah,
how long does it take, for example, and how long does it take, for example, somebody comes with osteoporosis to see a good, improvement? It takes 6 months, year to see the bone density improves. Has there any been study, or what's your knowledge of that?
Yeah, so there has been studies, and and personally from the people that come to my center is that we typically tell people a year.
Okay.
So we normally tell people to wait a year before DEXA scans, but we've had members as soon as 6 months see some pretty significant results. But also we warn them, we don't warn them, but we let them know that just coming to Osteostrong isn't going to be the be all end all, right? Because first off, you have to figure out if it's a bone density problem, you have to figure out, okay, what was causing the bone loss in the first place, right? And are you still losing bone? Because if you're still losing bone and you haven't figured out why you're still losing bone, just coming to Osteostrong isn't going to just magically fix you, right? So it might slow down the process, but then it might not actually help you reverse your osteoporosis. So we tell them that straight up, that it could be lifestyles, medication, it's all these other things that you probably need to take care of in order to see the full benefits of this. And for the ones who actually do that, yeah, they see benefits actually pretty quickly.
Yeah, we use a ton of bisphosphonates and rank ligand inhibitors in oncology, and these medicines are really tricky. We have, we used to quote like a 1% risk of jaw osteonecrosis with the bisphosphonates, but I think it's actually higher. I think it's probably like, especially in patients getting the high doses for, say, monthly for advanced cancer or whatnot, these things are probably, the risk is significantly higher. It's probably at least 5, maybe even 10% in my personal observation. But even the bisphosphonates used for just the oral bisphosphonates for bone density, these things have side effects, and we have to be careful about that. So.
Right. And that's usually why a lot of them come to us. And we don't try to deter them from them. I'm like, if you and your doc come to that conclusion, like that plus this can kind of work hand in hand, to even speed things up even more for you. But yeah, we've had pharmacists even come to us. They're like, I'm not taking it. We've had nurse practitioners come to us like, yeah, I'm not doing that either. Trying to find alternative means and everything to take care of their stuff. Yeah. Yeah, but we always make sure we send them. What I'm surprised by is that a lot of my clients that come to me saying they have osteoporosis, I'm like, hey, well, did your doctor recommend, you getting a serum CTX done, or recommend getting this done or that done, just to check your bone turnover markers? And they never heard of it before. So luckily I got a hold of a nurse practitioner over at CSOG. And so I actually recommend a lot of people go to her because she will actually do those kind of tests and everything for them and whatnot. She runs all the blood markers and lifestyle tests and everything for them over there. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, especially
That's
for
great.
those who have hereditary bone loss, it's definitely something. I'm sure there's a genetic component to this, and certainly trying to hit it from multiple angles seems to make a lot of sense. So
and lifestyle modification. A lot of people, they need sodas and smoking and all of those things. You need stop all of those bad behaviors and doing other things as well, and to reverse that and improve that. So because as we get earlier, we see so many fractures, so many people that this is really disable them and make them to not be able to enjoy their daily life.
Right. And believe it or not, there's actually, I can see if I can find it, there was actually a study out of West Point again, right, saying they actually had to turn down like a lot of candidates because a lot of them are coming in weaker, with weaker bones and everything like that, probably because of our modern lifestyle. So there's a suggestion out there that's saying is that a lot of us probably aren't even reaching our full bone mass capacity to begin with. Because usually around age 30 to 35 is when we're supposed to reach bone mass capacity, and then it slowly, dissipates from there. But some argue because of our lifestyles when we were kids, we probably didn't even reach full bone mass capacity by the time we were 30 and 35, right? So if you already aren't at full bone capacity by the time you get there, you're going to hit osteoporosis pretty quickly, on the backside of that. So that's actually a consideration that I've heard being floated around out there also.
It makes sense because, we used to work in a farm, we should use rock. And actually, WHO says working in the office as bad as for your health as bad as smoking. So when you sit in classroom through college and high school, and then you go to work in an office, your bone just start deteriorating because you don't use it.
Right. And look, if you look at today, like I don't have to throw her on the bus, but I look at my niece today, right? And she doesn't go out and play or anything. She goes to school, she's sitting at school, doing at school. Then when she comes home, she's playing with her friends, but on her iPad. Right? She's laying in her bed on her iPad, playing video games, through the iPad with her friends versus being outside playing, and that's the generation, and that's how they're coming up, and because I even grew up in the video game age, I'd come home from school and just sit there and play video games all day. And so I understand that concept and how that is very possible. Yeah, that we're just not getting full bone development as age because we're not being kids anymore. We're not going out there and wrestling and tumbling and falling and doing the things that kids do.
Is there any other research, James, that you wanted to mention? I know there's a whole bunch of, when I reviewed this, and thank you for providing the references, we'll include that in the show notes for the listeners. Is there any one or two studies that you wanted to talk about the HIIT training or bone density or other work?
And then I guess the ones that fascinated me the most, I already talked about the Project Total Conditioning, which was pretty cool. But even in that one, though, they were still training like 3 days a week within that one. And then the one study I know, I think you're familiar with, the studies that did out of McMaster University up in Canada, that was the first time that actually demonstrated that we can actually get away with less volume of work. So that's the one that actually did like the sprint training. So they worked out like 9 minutes a week on the sprint training, to where the endurance athletes worked out like 5 hours a week in there. And there was zero benefit for the people that were working 5 hours per week. Right. So the people who were running 9 minutes per week, did just as well as the endurance runners. And some argue that the sprint trainers actually did better because the endurance people had zero benefit whatsoever. Right. There's zero improvement, zero anything with the endurance to the regular endurance trained athletes versus the sprint athletes. Right.
Fascinating.
Were able to keep up, which was pretty fascinating. And one other thing that people might be interested to know is on the cardio side, is that they're suggesting, because when we think of cardio, we think of, heart and lungs, that is the heart and the lungs that's pumping the oxygen and everything like that to our muscles and everything like that. But more and more research is showing that aerobic conditioning is actually localized in the muscle and not the heart and lungs. So a study that was done in, I want to say it was 97, and another one, and it was redone again in 2000, to where they put people on a bike for sprint training, but they only exercised the one leg. So they did sprint training on one leg, and the control group just did endurance training on the one leg. And then I want to say it was 8 weeks, and then they retested them again. And then the sprint group on the sprint leg, their VO2 max improved on the sprint leg. But when they tested the leg that was untrained, there was no VO2 max improvement. Right. And so we think that cardio is a global thing throughout the entire body, when it actually really is specific to the muscle that is being trained. Right. And that's what those studies actually suggest, that aerobic capacity actually gets built within the muscles that are being trained, not necessarily within the heart and lungs themselves.
You think because of the muscle, demand, make the cardiovascular better?
Right. It's your muscles that's able to actually absorb and utilize the oxygen better. Right. So it's not like your lungs and your heart got better at their capacity of getting the oxygen and blood there. It's just that the actual muscle got better at utilizing the oxygen and the nutrients and everything that was being sent its way.
This is such a fascinating topic. Wow. This is something that I got zero of this during medical school. So this has just been so great. Thank you again. And maybe you can give a little handoff as to where listeners can find you.
Oh yeah, so if you guys want to come check us out at Osteostrong, we are a one-on-one personal strength training center. So if you're looking for muscular strength, you have osteoporosis, you want to lower your A1C, you just want to get stronger and look better, either way, you can come find us. Our website is osteostrongcos.com. We offer the first session's free. So if you want to come in and try us out for a free session, you are more than welcome to do so. I just give a shout out. Osteostrong is actually, we have about 150 locations around the world. So try to see if there's an Osteostrong near you and let them know James sent you.
Great, great.
Well,
Well,
thank
I'm
you so
learning so
much.
much about this because I was not quite aware of this past month or so. I've been so fascinated with this, and I'm looking forward to start some of my own program. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm happy to share.
Thank you so much.
All right.